Yo, welcome to yet another behind the scenes with me, YvensB. A bit of context for this video. In this video, I've tested the optical snoot from Strobepro. The goal of this shoot was to see how it actually behaves in real life situations, which means in the studio. And we got these results out of it. Now, if you want to see an actual review of the actual snoot, please click this video. If not, let's get started. As you already know, I build my setups light by light with the additive method of lighting. Basically, it means I add my light one at a time. So the first thing you see here is the actual red background, and this serves as the background for the entire shoot, and I believe the paper is from Savage Universal. Light one, the background. So lighting the background in this setup is actually quite simple, and you can actually use this trick in your own photo shoots. In this case, I'm only using a speed light, in this case the Godox V860VN. Being that it's so close to the background, you can easily illuminate the paper with a speed light, even an f14. So just make sure you hide it well behind the subject to avoid a lot of hours of Photoshop. And for memory, the light power of this speed light was actually 1/4. Light number 2, the rim light. Then we continued with the rim light with the Godox 8600BM, the old school one. I added a red gel inside of the strip box without any diffusion to get the maximum amount of saturation possible out of this gel. In this case, you can do without the gel itself, but I wanted some separation and I thought the red looked a bit cool because it connected the subject to the background. So that's just me, but do whatever you want. Light number 3, the main light. So when I'm done, I added the main light, which was in this case the Godox 8300 Pro with the Easy Lock 48-inch from Adorama. Now I have a question for you. Did you see it? If you're perceptive enough, I left the softbox only half diffused, and there's a reason why. I actually wanted the light to be a little harder to basically imitate the beauty dish effect without having to buy another beauty dish. A closer look inside would reveal that the deflector plate was also on, but I have zero footage of that, so I apologize for that. But here is something from the shoot to give you a perspective of how it looked like. So before taking out the snoot and adding too much complexity, I wanted to do, and you can also do it, some warm-up shots. And this is something you can integrate your shoots immediately. They're low pressure, and they also give you a chance to give your subject and yourself to get to know each other and understand your work method. It's especially important for me if ever your subject is also very inexperienced. It gives her a chance to get used to the flashes and the actual setup. Again, this relies on the principle of starting slow and building up to wherever you want. The big benefit of that is you can also get some more shots if ever they're good, which equals a bigger portfolio, which is always very, very welcomed. And now, let's take out the big guns. Light 4, the optical snoot. Okay, so here's a bit of a story. We started with the star pattern using the Strobepro Optical Snoot. The star pattern was the actual plan because I bought a special filter that allowed me to do stars in camera, but it was a complete fail. That filter doesn't do shit unless you overexpose it by way too much, which is intolerable. So I had to scrap that plan and figure something else. We did some straightforward shots with the actual pattern. And now that I take a look back, it kind of looks like propaganda for Soviet Russia. But here's my advice if ever you plan to use an optical snoot. I was at f14 when not using the optical snoot with the Godox 8300 Pro. But because the snoot and the lens removed a couple of stops of power, like a lot of stops of power, I had to scale back to 6.3 to get some light into it. So using the strobe from the 8400 Pro and with the snoot and the lens inside of the scene. So do make sure you aren't pushing your aperture too high if ever you're basing yourself basically, or you're planning to use that snoot later on. After completing the star shape, we went straight ahead with the other patterns I had in my bag. And to better understand the optical snoot, I also tested some patterns on the subject's face. Again, these didn't come out great, but I wanted to see how they behaved on a human face. Again, the lesson here is get some super tiny gobo patterns. Here are a few examples. They're basically straight out of camera, so don't judge them by their own look, please. And after the shoot, I sent these off to the lab for some retouching, well, which is basically myself. Here are some before and afters. And that wraps it up. And if you learned something from this video, just make sure to like it. And if you loved it, just make sure to subscribe to be notified and also to be aware of the following videos that are coming every week or 2 weeks in this channel. I also left a link to all the gear used in the shoot below, so be sure to grab something useful on the way if ever you find the optical snoot or any light that I'm using very useful to you. Again, this has been YvensB, Montreal advertising amateur photographer, and remember, together, let's light the world. Cheers.